All right, yeah, let's hit this last block. We've done some intense plotting and organizing and strategizing and organizing and mobilizing. Probably not in that
my
order.
arms tired.
Yeah, I love the way that we leave this playlist. Kicking it off with Kendrick Lamar.
What's been called the "we will overcome" of this generation, and I love the kind of thorny, complicated politics around it, and how it is like it's a song of hope and love and uplift, and yet it's still managed to be divisive for people. And part of that was the award show performance where he's standing on a cop car and whatever, but it has this beautiful poetic music video in black and white. And the message to me is so clear, is like, man, how could you not root for Black America when, in spite of everything that's been thrown at them, they still come back to, we're going to be, we've always been fine. We've always achieved excellence in spite of all the obstacles. It's like, man, I want to be in that corner.
Yeah.
You know, like I will get behind and help push the people at the back of that pack that are tired, because man, what a beautiful message, and what a beautiful way to live. It's like, no matter how hard it gets, life is still worth living. And even though we may not reach the promised land, you know, I still believe that it's the fight worth fighting. You know, again, plant the sapling that is in your hand. I mean, I don't feel like we have to say too much about this song because it's so seared into the consciousness right now. But I think in the 2 hours of music that we've been through up to this point with these 2 complimentary episodes, like you kind of need this deep breath in your lungs to like, this is the part of the movie where it fades out, and like, that doesn't mean the plot is over. Like, that's when it really starts, arguably. But like, you have all of this knowledge, and you've done all of these things, and you have these plans, and you're moving and you're marching, and now what? I do love this. To me is like the anthem of, you see these organizers and activists and people reminding each other that like self-care and self-love is a radical act. And going back to the meditation thing, like putting on your own mask first, like remembering to rejuvenate so you have more juice for the fight.
Yep.
This is what that song does. Like, you talked about you made the joke about the wireless charging thing.
Yeah.
This is like that for when you're tired. Like, you hear the weariness in this song.
Yeah.
But ... no matter what, we gonna be all right.
I already love this song for all the reasons you talked about, and I specifically love putting right on the other side of it Johnny Cash, because I don't want to focus too much on the people who may not be convinced that they can love other people in the world and fight to remove their oppression. But it's so good to draw out Johnny Cash here right on the other side of all right, because it's a similar type of alignment. It's a long road ahead. It's never going to be finished. But for Johnny Cash, I'm going to keep wearing black until this problem is solved. He didn't stop, right? But even inside of this, I think like I also love to bring Johnny Cash up in this context. You certainly do too. But like, to remind people that the country viewpoint of good old folks has not always been opposed to the viewpoints of someone like Kendrick Lamar. That is a false dichotomy. We talked about political framing from a two-party system. That's a framing. It's not been this way. Johnny Cash is here talking about protesting the treatment of poor people, talking about mass incarceration, talking about addiction and the way that we treat people who are downtrodden by drug addiction, talking about Vietnam and all the young people that we killed in a war that wasn't helpful to anybody. And his ability to take the stance of, here's all of the things that's terrible. And I'm in a perpetual state of not being okay with any of these things. They all need to improve, and none of them will improve to the point to where it's finished. And that is my stance. I think is not only worth acknowledging and considering a return to for some folks who may more closely align with Johnny Cash than Kendrick Lamar in their brains, but also I feel it's worth calling out on this record, Man in Black. Okay. One of the other tracks is a track with the Reverend Billy Graham. Like, I really want to like just put an eyeball on that little frozen moment in time where there was a part of history where Johnny Cash is doing a song about the downtrodden, impoverished, mass incarceration, addiction, war. And he's talking about all these. He's talking about how none of them are acceptable. And on this same record is a song with him, with what would become the world's foremost and most well-known preacher of gospel truth. And I use air quotes for a reason. But like, even in those songs, Johnny Cash is singing about what used to be simple gospel truths.
Yep.
Right? Jesus loves you. Jesus wants things for you. Like, you can join this community of people who believe in a better world and who support one another, like to the point where he's directly interfacing with the Reverend Billy Graham in a literal song. Okay. And like, just think about that was even possible to have exist in reality when half a century later, essentially the Graham's legacy is homophobia at this point, an inability to reconcile the downtrodden people in society with statements of faith. There's no possible way that an idea like this could even flow through our society right now because people believe that they're contradictory viewpoints. And I always love using music to come back to a point and say, that was never true. And it doesn't have to be true now.
Oh, by the way, also on that record, there is a song about Vietnam, and it's not a Bob Dylan-esque anti-war song necessarily, but he tells the story of, it starts with him and June at breakfast, talking about how fortunate they are to have traveled all of these places. And he's like, well, we haven't been to Saigon, actually. And so they went over there and played a USO show, and it's the story of their experience of hearing the shelling and the bombings that are going on all night, every night. And he ends that song by saying, well, now that's about all there is to tell about that little trip into living hell. And if I ever go back over there anymore, hope there's none of our boys there for me to sing for. I hope that war's over with and they all come back home to stay in peace. And to your point, I think Johnny Cash, like, contains the multitudes, I guess, but just has like that common sense thread of like, why would anybody want anything different than this? Like,
tough guys don't have to love war.
How is this any different? Like, this is a gospel truth.
Yeah.
Where do we lose the way? I also love one couplet from Man in Black, in particular, because I think you and I have to think about like what it actually looks like to be an ally, right? You're hearing a lot from people around performative allyship and like letting people know that you're like, I'm one of the good whites. He said, we're doing mighty fine, I suppose, in our streak of lightning cars and fancy clothes, but just so we're reminded of the ones who are held back up front, there ought to be a man in black, right? So if you're the person with the platform, you're the person with the privilege, you should be amplifying. You should be a voice for the people behind you. Until the situation changes, whatever else you have to do is not really that important, more than making sure all the good people, all your neighbors get fed and live their lives and can experience the same life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness to which you have been entitled in your life.
And even that, I love that particular part of the song because it draws an unexpected connection with Dead Prez. Because like in that song, we talked about how they're self-critiquing their own culture, right? They're pointing to people and they're saying, you've got stuff. Now, what are you going to do with it? Right? He's doing the same thing here. It's harder.
Another gospel truth. Our parents raised us to be like, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Yeah.
where in the hell do you lose the thread of that? With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
You've been blessed, whatever. You should then use that blessing and extend it to others. If not, you have failed in the eyes of God.
Yeah. And Cash is doing the same here, not only on the deeper level we're talking about, but at this particular time, country had taken its turn into rhinestones and Cadillacs.
Yep.
Like he's literally talking.
Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, he's literally talking to other musicians. Did you forget the trailer park? Like, did you forget all the people who got you here? Because they still don't have enough, right?
Do you not remember your brother getting cut in half on a saw? The wrong kid died. So then we end with Common.
Yeah.
With Letter to the Free, which was a song that he made for Ava DuVernay's 13th documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
And you put that on there. I think I maybe tuned it out when I watched 13th, with all apologies to Common. So thank you for bringing this like fully to my attention. Talk a little bit about, like, put a bow on it for us, because I think there's no better place to end than this one.
I love, in the context of direct action, resurfacing the depths of experience and facts and truth. And Common is not someone I pull up every day to listen to, because essentially it's sort of like a lecture series.
Yeah.
He's almost like his own little TED Talk with a lot of style. But I mean, his whole delivery, right, is just, it's essentially spoken word with hip hop influence.
In fairness,
you know?
when you make fun of the kind of trope of conscious rap, I think Common is like the exact archetype that you bring into your mind, where it's like, all right, like, we believe the same things, man, but just dial it back a little bit. But he's really on the money on this one.
Perfect point, right? This song, or other Common songs, often like taken out of that context, it's like, whoa, you're trying to cover way too much ground way too quickly, you know? Whereas if we've taken the time to sit with what direct action looks like, I think one of the most motivating things is to come back to, and here is a summary and a reminder of why we're doing this over and over and over. I'm going to keep explaining it to you over and over and over. Look at the 13th Amendment, right? Like, simple things. This still exists. It hasn't gone away. Johnny Cash is still wearing black. Kendrick Lamar is still saying you're going to be exhausted, but you're going to be all right. I'm still telling you all the reasons that they're not all right are still in place. Here they are again.
You're right.
You know?
I think everything in this song is a 4.5 minute Cliff's Notes version of what just took us 2+ hours to do.
Yeah.
So that it's potent. There's a lot of density in this song, and he pulls it off really artfully. I think having lines in there like, now whips and chains are subliminal. They used to call us the N-word. Now they call it criminal. There are so many good little turns of phrase like that. I think some of the different musical facets of things that we talked about over the course of these past 2 episodes are reflected here. We talked about Bob Dylan and Stevie Wonder, and some of those like, whoa, make you sit up in your chair moments. There's a lot of those in here as well. I also love that he ends each verse by describing this right now as America's moment to come to Jesus. And that's a phrase that, you know, we can pretty easily take for granted, but like, if we are truly under God and indivisible, like, you know, what does that really mean? Like, why can we not all agree on seeing the God in everyone and appreciating them for their differences and who they are, and trying to make a way for everyone? Like, how could it be anything but that?
Yeah. And that's why it's important to come back here after we spend the beginning of this playlist going, there is no God, clear the room, you know? Because by the time you come back to it, like, hold on, Kendrick, Common, and Johnny Cash all say, maybe we need to come back to Jesus.
Agree,
yeah. And like, that's because like there is a larger and more embraceable form of God, of religion, of, let's leave out religion, of God, that represents what it could look like in this country, especially for people to be appreciated, loved, and supported regardless of how they were born, when they were born, their parents, their grandparents, whatever any of that stuff is. All these people are saying we can come back to this thing. There's still a thing there. And we're all having trouble seeing it at the moment. And we're all having trouble calling it the same thing because everyone thinks their Jesus is different and hates the other Jesus or whatever. Like everyone is using...
I'm in the front row and I'm hammered drunk.
Thank you for bringing up Talladega Nights right there. I appreciate that so much. But we adopt and adapt these things like God, and we turn them into these little creatures who do our bidding. And like that's why I love the whole idea and narrative of this whole thing. It's like we can give ourselves the space to say, turns out I might not have a great idea of what God is. Let's start from scratch again and go through this thing. And at the end of it, you're always going to come back to the real essence of it. You're always going to see what's actually there. And I feel like that's what Common is pointing out here that builds on all the other songs as well. Like there is a truthiness that's under things that has a part to do with your intuitive heart. And if you can get quiet and then enable yourself to act based on what you're hearing, you'll experience God and we'll be able to share that together. But it might look different than what you expected.
Enjoy these last few songs.